Here's everything you need to remember from House of the Dragon Season 1. Welcome back to Nerdist News, I'm Dan Casey, and today we're gearing up for the return of Max's other big Succession story, House of the Dragon Season 2. Remember that show? Tons of blonde wigs, internecine family drama, and a metric ton of dragons. Now, you might be asking yourself, Dan, these dragons, are they dancing perchance? Well, euphemistically, you betcha. Hot D Season 2's draconic dance is actually a brutal war between two factions vying for control of the Iron Throne, the Greens and the Blacks. Sounds familiar, right? Jogging some memories? I mean, it's been a while since Season 1, and chances are you haven't just reread Fire and Blood, the fictional history of the Targaryen dynasty on which this show is based. So, in celebration of the Besteros that Westeros has to offer, we're gonna answer some of those burning questions for you. Like, how did the Targaryen family get to this deadly point? Who is battling over the Iron Throne and why? And why will Fire and Blood engulf the realm 2 whole centuries before the events of Game of Thrones? If you don't remember, don't worry, because this is everything you need to remember about House of the Dragon Season 1 before you watch Season 2. Now, an exceedingly special thanks to Nerdist Maester with the Mostest, Michael Walsh, for his assistance with this video. If you want to read all about it, he has you covered over on Nerdist.com. Now, it goes without saying that spoilers for Hot D Season 1 are ahead. We've been pretty clear about what this video is going to be, so if you're still watching and then you get upset about spoilers, well, you really only have yourself to blame for this. Dragon! Succession, or the daddiest of issues. Now, for those who don't know, or those who appreciate some quality exposition, House of the Dragon centers on a brutal war of succession that tears House Targaryen asunder as everyone and their mother vies for control of the Iron Throne, and thus the Seven Kingdoms. The realm is thrown into chaos over a question of primogeniture versus male primogeniture, namely, should King Viserys' firstborn child Rhaenyra Targaryen succeed her late father, or should King Viserys' eldest son Aegon be the one to wear the crown? Firstborn females walk like this, but firstborn males walk like this. Who should be king? Or queen? I'm sorry. Factions form around each candidate. In one corner, we have the Greens, who back Aegon II, the son of King Viserys Targaryen and Queen Alicent Hightower. And then we have the Blacks, who back Rhaenyra Targaryen, the daughter of King Viserys and the late Queen Aemma. Now, this is a question that threatened to tear the realm apart once before, even back before we saw King Viserys go from regal monarch into a human cranberry bog back in Season 1. King Viserys' grandfather, the old King Jaehaerys I, had no obvious heir, and instead of making a decision and sticking with it, he assembled all the lords and ladies of the realm to name one for him during a grand gathering at Harrenhal. You know, back when it was only mildly cursed rather than extremely f***ing cursed. At long last, the lords of Westeros chose Jaehaerys' grandson Viserys over his cousin Rhaenys, prompting her to become nicknamed the Queen Who Never Was forevermore. It was this decision that established an unwritten rule that males take precedence over females in the Iron Throne's line of succession, and this fateful vote would eventually lead to the future war that divided House Targaryen and the Seven Kingdoms. King Viserys I and his wife Queen Aemma, who was half Targaryen, half Arryn of the Vale, had only one surviving child, a daughter, Rhaenyra. King Viserys almost had a male heir that he believed would be king one day, but the pregnancy proved complicated for Queen Aemma. King Viserys, in a heartbreaking decision, chose to save the life of his unborn son over his very much alive wife. And to make matters far worse, not only did Queen Aemma die, but the baby passed away a few days later. This meant that Viserys' feckless and reckless brother, Daemon Targaryen, was his legal heir. And while the king loved his brother, many, like the Hand of the King Sir Otto Hightower, believed that Daemon would bring the realm to ruin if he ever ascended the Iron Throne. And I mean, they're kinda right. Case in point, Daemon was overheard toasting about his nephew's death, calling him the heir for a day. And rightly so, a furious Viserys bucked tradition. He instead named his daughter Rhaenyra his successor and ordered Daemon to leave King's Landing. Then Viserys made the lords of Westeros swear oaths of fealty to accept Rhaenyra as his rightful lawful successor. They bend the knee and yeet the D. That's also when he told his daughter the real reason that Aegon the Conqueror united the Seven Kingdoms. And this is the story of Aegon's dream. Now, Aegon I is a major figure in Westerosi history. Known as Aegon the Conqueror, he was the first king of the Seven Kingdoms and the first person to sit upon the Iron Throne. But as we learned in Season 1, Aegon was something known as a dreamer. He had prophetic visions of the future. More specifically, he had a dream about the eventual White Walker invasion that would come to pass in Game of Thrones. Aegon believed that only a united Westeros led by House Targaryen could prevent the end of the world. It's maybe the single biggest revelation in the history of A Song of Ice and Fire. Or maybe the second biggest after it turned out that Varys wasn't a merman.
Actually, I rather enjoy him.
I mean, probably not. But even more shocking was when King Viserys married Alicent Hightower. That's right, folks, with Prince Daemon out of both King's Landing and his brother's good graces, that left room for Ser Otto Hightower to put his fingers together, steeple them real quick, and start conniving. This rascally rabbit. With the grieving Viserys vulnerable to persuasion, the Hand of the King made his move, the ultimate reach around. He instructed his daughter to console Viserys during his time of grief. And I did put console in air quotes. The patently obvious, objectively creepy power play paid off though, as the king shocked everyone by marrying the much younger Alicent rather than a much more politically savvy suitor. King Viserys and Queen Alicent went on to have 4 children. The loathsome, lazy, amoral Aegon, the sweet, simple Helaena, who also has prophetic dreams, the hyper-focused, driven warrior Aemond, and Daeron, who did not appear in Season 1. In proud Targaryen family tradition, Aegon married his sister Helaena. He was basically the world's worst husband. He much preferred to father as many children out of wedlock as humanly possible, and to drink his life away on King's Landing Street of Silk. But with that said, these two did have 3 children, the twins Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, and their younger brother Maelor, who also did not appear in Season 1. Now, despite his many personal shortcomings, many people thought that Aegon should have supplanted Rhaenyra as heir for the Iron Throne, but King Viserys did not change his plans for succession. Although during one drunken evening, he did express some doubts to Alicent about whether or not he should. With that said, King Viserys' unexpected marriage did have one other consequence. Rhaenyra lost something deeply important to her: her friendship with Alicent, with whom she had been as close as can be. However, it's Rhaenyra's own actions that ultimately drove them even further apart. Obstinate and independent to a fault, Rhaenyra refused to pick a husband from the innumerable suitors who offered their hands in marriage. Not only that, she was kind of a dick about it. She left many feeling deeply insulted.
We're leaving.
King Viserys finally forced her into an arranged marriage with her cousin Laenor Velaryon. He was the son of the powerful Lord of the Tides and Master of Ships Corlys Velaryon, aka the Sea Snake, aka the coolest nickname in this whole goddamn show. And I do mean forced her, because this happened after Viserys heard scandalous reports about his daughter cavorting in Flea Bottom with her uncle Daemon. Viserys gave his daughter something of an uncle-matum. If Rhaenyra did not agree to the marriage, he would name her half-brother Aegon as his lawful heir instead. While Rhaenyra narrowly avoided splitting heirs, her evening of good, wholesome family fun resulted in 2 powerful figures losing their place in the king's court. Viserys finally realized how deeply Otto had manipulated him into marrying Alicent, and so he removed him as Hand of the King. And this also led to a second deep and enduring estrangement between King Viserys and his brother Daemon. Not even the glory of winning a war in the Stepstones alongside Corlys Velaryon proved to be enough to keep him around. The man just can't stop getting crabs, it seems. But things were about to get even seedier, because what no one knew was that Rhaenyra had actually ended that evening with her sworn protector and member of the Kingsguard, someone who my colleague Michael Walsh has deemed the worst human on the planet,
Ser Criston Cole.
And their relationship would also forever change the realm as we know it. The many loves of Rhaenyra Targaryen. Now, before her marriage, Criston Cole, who had already violated his sacred Kingsguard oath, proposed that Rhaenyra run off with him to Essos, but she refused to give up her future crown and the world-changing prophecy entrusted to her. Being the simple bitch that he is, this ended their relationship. And so the incel sword grew to hate Rhaenyra and instead swore his life to protect her rival, Queen Alicent. Now, it should be noted that Rhaenyra's first marriage also played a pretty significant part in the coming civil war. Her husband, Laenor Velaryon, was secretly gay, a fact that she had no problem with. These two agreed to live their own lives while still maintaining a close personal bond. Laenor spent his time with his paramours, while Rhaenyra spent hers with Sir Harwin Strong, the son of the new Hand of the King, Lionel Strong. And the proof was in the pudding. Rhaenyra's 3 dark-haired sons were all clearly Sir Harwin's offspring. It was an open secret that somehow everyone except Viserys knew to be true. Now eventually, as most couples do, Rhaenyra and Laenor came up with a plot to fake his death. Not for insurance, but so he could live freely in Essos, and so she could marry her uncle Daemon. Sure. And good news, because he was recently widowed for the 2nd time. Daemon's first wife had a fatal accident, which he caused, and his second wife, Laenor's sister Laena Velaryon, died during childbirth in a hail of dragon fire. Now everyone, including Laenor's powerful parents, assumed that Rhaenyra and Daemon had Laenor killed, which isn't unreasonable based on everything he's ever done ever. Nevertheless, in grand Game of Thrones fashion, Targaryen relatives would go on to marry, and Rhaenyra and Daemon had 2 kids together. Aegon, yes, another one, shut up, and Viserys. And this time both had blonde Targaryen hair. Unfortunately for Viserys I, his 2 families didn't see eye to eye. The kind but ultimately naive King Viserys was desperate for all of his grandkids to grow up together and form strong familial bonds that would ultimately strengthen House Targaryen. Unfortunately, this is Westeros, and it simply could not happen.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.
Alicent's boys viciously mocked their strong cousins for clearly being illegitimate, and this battle between the broods erupted one fateful evening when Aemon decided to claim his first dragon. But not just any dragon, the biggest dragon in the world, Vhagar. When he returned from his first flight, a fight broke up between the boys. It escalated quickly until Rhaenyra's son Luke wound up slicing out Aemon's eye. What followed was utter chaos. The entire royal court saw just how deep-seated the animosity between Alicent and Rhaenyra actually was. Alicent believed she'd always been dutiful, and Rhaenyra got to do whatever she wanted. And Rhaenyra believed that Alicent, who wanted Luke to lose an eye as payment, was a conniving fraud lusting for power behind a veil of morality. Larys Strong kills his family and Otto Hightower returns. Larys Strong, or Larys Clubfoot, was King Viserys' silver-tongued master of whispers. He had his father and brother murdered in a fire at Harrenhal, which made him lord of the ruined castle. He then parlayed the wanton murder of his family into working for Queen Alicent, who kept Larys happy by indulging his foot fetish. Clubfoot? More like Foot Club, am I right? Anyway, let's move on. Deathbed confessions lead to a new king. All good kings come to an end, and so did Viserys Targaryen. The dying monarch spent his final night on Earth relatively happy. He'd organized a dinner for all of his family where everyone actually had a nice time for a change. But when Viserys left for the night, Aemon couldn't help but insult his cousins one last time, splintering the 2 sides all over again. Alicent went to go see her husband. Hallucinating and suffering from dementia, Viserys believed he was talking to Rhaenyra about Aegon's dream. Alicent misunderstood and thought Viserys was talking about their son Aegon, and that he wanted their child to become the king rather than Rhaenyra. When Alicent went to the small council to share this news, she learned they were already planning to install Aegon as king over Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra was actually back at Dragonstone and unaware her father had even died. Now, certified dingus Criston Cole wound up murdering the only member of the council who dissented, and so they kept the king's death a secret for days on end. They used this time to force lords and ladies in King's Landing to swear fealty or die screaming. Ultimately, Cole crowned a previously reluctant Aegon in the Dragon Pit with Aegon the Conqueror's crown and his Valyrian steel sword Blackfire in front of all of King's Landing. Now, Princess Rhaenys, who Alicent tried to imprison in the Red Keep, wound up ruining the festivities when she broke through the floor with her dragon Meleys. Now, perhaps foolishly, Rhaenys opted not to kill the entire Hightower faction, even though her 2 granddaughters and only unquestioned living heirs would now be in mortal peril. Rhaenys instead flew to Dragonstone to alert Rhaenyra about Aegon taking the Iron Throne. The Dance of Dragons begins with a mother's grief. When she was alerted to her half-brother's treachery, Rhaenyra did not respond with fire and blood. Instead, she showed a surprising amount of restraint. She even debated whether she should give up her claim entirely to keep the peace, in large part because of Aegon the Conqueror's dream and its apocalyptic implications for Westeros. But then she didn't. Kingsguard member Eric Cargill managed to steal her late father's crown and brought it to Rhaenyra on Dragonstone, where her supporters crowned her queen in a secret coronation. Now, it's also worth noting that Eric's identical twin brother Eric stayed in King's Landing to serve in Aegon's Kingsguard. In order to shore up support and muster her forces, Rhaenyra sent her two oldest sons, Jace and Luke, to see if the Lords of Westeros remembered the oaths they swore. Some did, others didn't, and some hadn't even made them. Their fathers had, a real technicality no-down boo-over. That included Boros Baratheon, who agreed to support Aegon in exchange for Aemond marrying one of his daughters. It was an arrangement that the young Prince Luke knew nothing of when he arrived at Storm's End to seek the support of House Baratheon. There, poor Luke found an angry Boros and his super intense cousin Aemond, who wanted one of Luke's eyes for long overdue retribution. Now, Luke tried to leave peaceably on his small dragon Arrax, but a determined Aemond followed on the much bigger Vhagar. As Aemond chased Luke down to merely toy with him, the dragons acted out, and Vhagar wound up killing both Luke's dragon and the young prince in one fell swoop.
Vhagar! No!
It was maybe the most catastrophic miscalculation and escalation in the series so far. So much so that it's the image we end on. Season 1 ends with Daemon telling Rhaenyra about her child's death and her looking on with steely resolve. And so with Luke's death, the Dance of the Dragons began in earnest. It's a brutal, protracted battle that will play out over the course of Hot D Season 2 and beyond. And there you have it, folks. That's everything you need to remember about House of the Dragon Season 1 before you watch Season 2. So now you can kick back, relax, make yourself a nice blood and cheese plate to enjoy Hot D come June 16th. Anyway, thank you again to Criston Cole's #1 hater, Michael Walsh, for his help with this episode. If you want to delve even deeper into the world of Westeros and forge more links on your Maester's chain, we've got you covered over on Nerdist. In the meantime, folks, tell us, what did you think of House of the Dragon Season 1? What do you hope to see happen in Season 2? Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, make sure you stay tuned to Nerdist.com.